Daniel Mminele will part ways with ABSA Bank at the end of this month. He stepped into the position as CEO just over a year ago, in fact about 16 months ago, after leaving the Reserve Bank where he was deputy governor. ABSA says his departure follows differences he held over the bank's transformation, different views, bank transformation and strategy. Let's bring in eNCA business editor Devan Murugan for more details on this particular story. So Devan, even with just two short statements that were released by ABSA yesterday, we're still thin on detail as to what exactly are those differences that led to Mminele's departure. I mean, we're talking here about a man who was celebrated by ABSA when he arrived from the Reserve Bank.
Indeed, you hit it on the head there, Thulas. ABSA appeared very excited about his arrival at the bank. There were a number of other credible candidates, as you know, for the role. But ABSA waited for his 6-month cool-off period to end at the Reserve Bank. So excited were they about Daniel Mminele. And it's a pity, Thulas, that we were not part of the select media that board chair Wendy Lucas-Bull decided to speak to yesterday, because there are a number of unanswered questions on this one. The official stance at the moment is that Daniel Mminele had his vision related to strategy and cultural transformation. That outlook was not what the board and some executives had. So divergent was this that Daniel Mminele had to say goodbye. Now, some are saying surely the board should have had more control on the matter. Some analysts say perhaps much of that strategy was in place and that came from Maria Ramos, and maybe the idea that Mminele was to continue with that strategy didn't go down very well. But we're still left with very little answers.
And I see, Devan, that there is also talk of the differences being so stark that some executives within ABSA would have left the bank if Mminele had stayed.
You're quite right. Business Day is quoting board chair Wendy Lucas-Bull as saying these differences were so pronounced that there was an increased risk of loss of talent, she says, and they had to make a decision in the interests of business. They were seeing people who had become willing to look at other opportunities outside the bank. Now, that's causing many commentators to ask if ABSA is really in full gear to transform. We see the Black Management Forum, Thulas, has already made it clear that it's taken that sort of racial position on its stance when addressing this. But it certainly did come as some sort of a shock and really with very little explanation as to what those differences really entailed.
And I see that Black Management Forum talking about the need for more transparency around that particular issue and also issues of succession planning within ABSA. Speaking of succession planning, the departure of Daniel Mminele comes after Peter Matlare's untimely death, and now we have Mminele departing from ABSA. What does this do to the leadership of ABSA? Is there going to be a vacuum?
There certainly would be, according to many analysts. And remember, this is a bank that's big. It's one of the big 5 in South Africa. So it looks like there's a problem clearly. There's COVID-19. There's increased competition coming from all sides of the banking sector. Digital banks are on the rise, Thulas, the likes of Time, Zero, Discovery Bank. So no need to wonder why ABSA's share price was down 4.2% yesterday when the news broke out. There's no time frame to replace Mminele. We also know, or don't know at least, what the plans are on Peter Matlare's position. That's yet to be filled. Jason Quinn now is taking up the position for the time being during Mminele's departure. So, yes, with all this competition, with the ever-changing landscape of banking, and, of course, with the fact that ABSA has ceded market share, this certainly does present a bit of a vacuum, Thulas.
Kind of hard to not draw parallels with the departure of Basani Maluleke at African Bank. The reasons perhaps were different, but, you know, the narrative and the questions being asked are similar.
It is. I mean, if you look at it, this conflict between the board and the executives, that's sharing parallels with this. And it just seems that banks, certainly these days, are not sticking on keeping on to that CEO, Maria Ramos, a decade-long reign at ABSA. So one wonders what is this new trend now and what's the source of it, where banks simply cannot get hold of that CEO, and then you have this conflict emerging between board and executive.
Hey, Devan, thank you for your insights. That's eNCA business editor Devan Murugan there, weighing in on a story that's gotten a lot of people reflecting on issues of transformation in terms of leadership of some of the key private sector institutions in this country. The departure there of Daniel Mminele, the imminent departure of Daniel Mminele from ABSA.